What's up, bookworms? Matt here again. Today we're going to be reviewing Skyward. Now, this is a Brandon Sanderson book. It is my first ever sci-fi book I've ever read before, and I've got to say, initial impressions, I love it. I think it's a great genre. It feels like fantasy in a lot of ways. I guess that's why people lump fantasy and sci-fi together. But obviously it does have its differences, but I like how, I guess the main difference is that magic is replaced with technology, but you still have that same sense of wonder that you get from looking at magic. And Brandon, being an incredible creator of magic, I think does a wonderful job with his sci-fi technology here. I think that's a good place to start, to be honest. The world building. Now, in this world, it's called detritus, something like that. The humans are all trapped in these caverns underground on this planet where you can't really see the night sky. Instead, it's surrounded by layers of a metal shield that effectively traps all of the humans in, and they're the last survivors of this ship crash that crashed into the planet 80 years ago. And I really love seeing how a society has developed over that time, you know. As someone who's interested in the idea of one day writing a book, for me a fantasy book, but still a book where all the characters live in underground caves, I found it really interesting how a lot of the concepts Sanderson had come up with were things I had also considered myself. So a good example of that would be, you know, instead of eating bread, they eat fried algae, and the protagonist Spin hunts rats. Instead of solar energy or hydroelectricity or burning oil, they use geothermal energy because they're so deep down. So you see a lot of these kind of industries and ways of living that are created that are completely alien to you or me, but still work just as well, and really immerse you in the world. I thought that was a really good aspect of it, was how good its world was in immersing you. I think the sci-fi technology, and I think maybe this is just me, but I guess like with magic, you can give me an explanation of how it works, and I can be like, yeah, I can buy that power exists. But when you tell me, oh, for example with the spaceships, oh, there's this thing called an acclivity ring, where it's this ring of stone on the bottom of the ship that allows it to hover and fly, you know, with virtually any height. I think a bit more explanation would be needed for that for me, because that makes me think, well, if this exists, why don't other things that use this technology exist? How do these shields work? Why are some stronger than others? You know, the fact that all these great technologies exist, for me at least, I think at times could pull me out of the world a bit, because I'm left wondering, how did these things come to exist but not other technologies I could come up with surrounding this tech? And why do some things exist but not others? And I think there are some explanations for that, for sure, that go on, because I'm reading the second book now. I think it's called Starlight or Starsight or something. And you're getting some explanations, but on others you're not. So I feel that's maybe somewhere it could improve, but I'm not. This is my first sci-fi book, so I don't know if that's more just maybe a trope of the genre I can't buy as much. So there's just a caveat there. I think finally, in terms of world building, the central antagonists, the Krell, the enemies of humanity, are really good. You know, they don't seem to behave to the normal standards of warfare. The standards of warfare often through like the philosophy of Sun Tzu, which we actually hear a lot of because they live in a military-dominated society. It doesn't match up. They never find any bodies in these ships, and they only ever come down at a maximum of 100 at a time, which is peculiar and adds a sense of mystery that is later explained and is later explored. but makes them a lot more interesting because you're left wondering, well, why aren't they doing these things? Sometimes writers can do something like that, but it's never explained and it just feels like lazy writing, whereas this actually feels very smart because of how it's communicated. So yeah, world building, excellent. I think world building is a brilliant strength of this book. Moving on to, let's say, the characters. I mean, the characters are what drives any story after all. This is a big break from Brandon Sanderson's usual writing style. I've read all of the Cosmere, which is his shared universe of most of his books, and virtually all of those are, for the most part, fantasy based and also third person with many characters. You see the perspectives of many characters. This is not only sci-fi, but it's also a single character, Spin, who you follow for the entire book, and you follow it in first person. I think Sanderson does a really good job of using first person to explore her inner thoughts. There was one moment actually where, or a couple actually, where Sanderson uses brackets to explain, to kind of show our own internal little diversions of thoughts we have, or little caveats we have in our own mind, which is something I'd never really seen before in writing. I think maybe because I only really read third person, I hadn't seen that dive of a deep into a character's personality. I think Spin is a really interesting character. We see she has a really good explanation for why she is the way she is. You know, she is obsessed with this idea of being the ultimate warrior and proving everyone wrong, because she's grown up in a society that has outcast her for her father's reputation, and she has this constant mindset of wanting to prove herself that is slowly kind of chipped away at and cracked. And you, as the book goes on, you start to see that while she still deeply cares for wanting to be this fighter pilot, why she wants to be it changes to a much more genuine and, I think, admirable answer. So in that sense, I think she has a great character arc. Of course, there are plenty of other characters, a great supporting cast. Ironside serves as a really good antagonist for Spin, because she represents everything Spin wants but can't have, and Ironsides is the one stopping her from having it, using every chance she gets to put Spin down. It creates this really good underdog relationship between the two, where even though the two very rarely ever see each other, she's this almost external force which makes Spin want to give up every step of the way, but she never does, and she pushes Spin. I've read too much Brandon Sanderson. So because of that, Ironsides basically pushes Spin to become a better person because of that. We also have a great supporting cast of friends. Jorgen, Brig, all of the crew in all of her classmates and her teacher Cobb, they all have unique personalities with different character traits, backstories behind them. We see all of them explored a bit, and even though as the book goes on, less and less of them stay in the flight school, and obviously the characters that stay longer we see more development for. I think overall none of these characters feel too one note. All of them have an impact on Spin in some way, shape or form, which is really what you want in characters, I think. You want them all to have their own wants and dreams and goals, and you see these. And these characters that at first might appear, really cruel or mean or arrogant, you see the other side to them. And then I think even with Ironsides, who can, when you see it first from just Spin's perspective, can seem this really horrible person, as the book goes on you find that all of these characters are a lot more grey than initially cast, which shows Spin's evolution as a character from seeing everyone around her as horrible to really understanding that everyone has their own problems. Now, finally, the third thing, plot. I think the plot is probably the weakest area of this book. Now, I don't think it's bad. I don't want to say it's bad at all. I really enjoyed the plot. It was really gripping. You know, when I finished this book, I read like 200 pages each day for the last couple of days. It is really good. The only thing I'd say is I felt the plot could be a bit predictable. I think there were some things that caught me off guard, and I won't say what those are. I want you to read it for yourself, and when you do, come back and tell me in the comments below what you thought of it. But until then, I don't want to spoil it. I think that this book struggles in that it doesn't have one driving plot. Now, what I mean by that is, even though Sanderson has described this book as the girl finds the dragon egg plot archetype, but in space, and there is that narrative, and that is a central part of the plot. It feels like there are many plots, none of which are too important. A lot of it feels like, oh, Spin fights the Krell again. What happens next? Spin fights the Krell again. Spin fights the Krell again. It just feels quite repetitive in that sense. And I felt that the dragon egg, you'll know what I mean when you read it. It's basically she discovers a thing, I won't say what, that she wants to try and use to further her position, and wants to keep to herself at the start. And I guess the thing is that I liked that side of it, and it introduces a really great supporting character who serves as a lot of the comedic relief for the book. I think it felt to everything goes right for Spin. I never felt any real pressure, apart from one moment where I'm wondering, oh no, you know, someone's going to discover it or someone's going to find out. I never felt that pressure. And even when something bad happens, it felt very predictable that something was going to happen to change it. So overall, I felt like the plots were great, but they could have been a bit fleshed out more. I felt there could have been more strings to keep me hooked, because what was really keeping me going personally was Spin and her interaction with the world and the other characters. That was what was driving it for me, and wanting to discover the mystery of why the world was the way it was. So with that, I'm going to cut that review short there. This hasn't been too long a book. I've mainly been spending my time reading the next one. The third one actually comes out in a month, so I really recommend you try this book out now, because it's a really good time for you to get into the Skyward series if you enjoy it. But with that, it is time to end the video. What did you think? Feel free to tell me what you thought. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, please tell me why. I really appreciate any feedback you can give me. But for the most part, any subscriptions really help me out, and tell me that I should be making more book reviews, more content like this. But until the next video, I hope you have a wonderful week, a wonderful few days, and I will catch you next time. Goodbye.